what if I could somehow help my colleague around the world become, let's say, just 1% better, 0.5% better in their diagnosis, simply by removing pre-analytical obstacles, making their life easier, reducing errors. I think that the cumulative impact would be vastly greater than anything I could achieve in, let's say, 10 careers as an individual pathologist.
Welcome to the People of Pathology podcast. I'm Dennis Strank. On this podcast, we explore pathology, laboratory medicine, and forensic science. What happens when a pathologist questions the way we've always done it and decides to build the tools to change it? In today's episode, I speak with Dr. Soufiane Azdad, founder of Algoscope and a forward thinker in pathology innovation. Dr. Azdad shares the pivotal moments that led him from initial reluctance about the field to a mission of fixing its most important problems. We'll discuss some of these ideas and how these changes have an ethical implication. All right, let's get into it with Dr. Soufiane Azdad. Can you tell me the story of your path into pathology? Why did you choose this field?
Funny enough, when pathology was the first suggested to me by a friend, my first words were, hell no, ain't no way I'm becoming a lab rat.
Okay.
So funny how life works, right? So let me take you back where it all started, because I think you need some background. So I grew up in France, in a middle-sized city, not far from Paris, called Compiègne, a neighborhood that you can call a hood. I was born to a working-class Moroccan immigrant family, and I was the youngest of 5 siblings. And in our household, university, let's say, wasn't optional, and all my siblings had set the bar quite high. So after high school, my older brother, a radiology technician, convinced me to try med school. For some context, the French system is a bit different from the USA. There is no college. We go straight to med school after high school. And it was quite tough, but a fair system, because we had a very hard exam that we call a contest at the end of the year. And this exam decided who continued the medical studies or not. So
okay.
I said it was tough, but fair, because when now I see young Americans on social media asking celebrities to pay for their tuitions, I'm very glad that in my time, I just have to pay $5 a year of scholarship. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
$5 a year as a scholarship student. You had it right, €5. And it wasn't a sport scholarship, but a scholarship determined by the social criteria for low-income households. So it was truly a meritocratic system that gave kids like me a real shock. So throughout medical school, I was fascinated by visual diagnosis. I wanted to become either a dermatologist or a radiologist. I love the idea of looking at something and immediately knowing what's wrong without waiting weeks with test results, etc. Then came the pivotal moment. I was in my 6th year of med school, and Sami, one of my old friends, and who is now one of my business partners, funny enough. He told me about his cousin's experience in pathology in Singapore. He told me, yeah, you should consider pathology. It's very cool. But despite my initial lab rat reaction, something clicked when I started to learn more about it, because often people don't know, especially medical students, about pathology. And when I discovered was what pathology was exactly about, and I discovered that it was the perfect blend between visual diagnosis that I loved in dermatology and radiology, and with even a more crucial role in patient care, to be honest. And as someone who always enjoyed working with my hands, I enjoyed the surgical processing part. So pathology really appealed to me for that reason. And it was like finding the missing piece of the puzzle.
Now, you said you did enjoy grossing? You said you liked working with your hands. Tell me about that. Like, what was your first experience handling tissue specimens?
Excellent question. Actually, I really enjoyed grossing, but I quickly noticed that it wasn't the case for everyone. It's fascinating to observe different approaches and different personalities. Some senior pathologists insisted on examining every single specimen personally or even handling them themselves, which was incredibly educational for us as residents. But some others say would avoid the rushing room as much as possible. So being naturally comfortable with manual work. And people need to know that, yes, knowing how to cook actually helps in pathology. So I enjoyed using my hands dexterity, and I appreciated the meticulous, clean work. And I clearly remembered my first experience in the grossing room with the professor. I was still a medical student at the time, not even a resident. And I had this idealized version of high-tech vision of the laboratory medicine, kind of like on TV shows like CSI, Bones, etc., with all technology and holograms. But the reality was quite, let's say, different.
Yeah,
And
a little bit.
yeah, technically it was closer to MasterChef than Bones. It was more cooking that than high technology. So
Okay.
my first specimen, it was 11 years ago, but I still remember it was a spleen. And I remember being struck by the paradox. We had this precious, unique specimen that we have to preserve. And our analysis literally consisted of chopping the heck of it, destroying it somehow, the integrity of it, turning it into little small pieces that end up floating in a formalin bucket. So I was a bit shocked and I asked, Professor, are we supposed to cut it like that every time? He say, yes, how else you want to see the inside? Then I ask, what if we forgot to measure something or to do something? And he told me something that really stuck with me. He said in French, eh ben, mon grand, ici tu apprends la rigueur. Let me translate it to you. It's here you're going to learn rigor, my young man. Hell they do. He didn't have a hillbilly accent. Please, Professor Chatelain, don't kill me if you heard this podcast. But in a nutshell, knowing myself as someone with often my head is in the cloud, I was a bit embarrassed because if you think about it, that's true. Rigor is key. You only get one shot. There's no going back. So if you screw up, if you forget something, there's no going back. So this realization was the key moment for me. I thought it wasn't normal. We could do better in 2014. At that time, it was 2014. Now it's a bit later. So looking back at this, let's say, experience, I think this is probably where the first seeds of my project were planted.
I like that. All right. So that's one seed for it. Here's another, and you told me this the last time we talked. There was an incident of a misplaced specimen, and this had an effect on you as a resident. And I think it also was another seed in where you are now. Can you tell me that story?
Yeah. Later, during my residency, something happened. I wrote about it in their article on the Pathologists. But what I didn't mention in the article, it was that, let's say, it was partially my fault. So it was 9 years ago, and now it's time barred. I played the fifth, like you say, in the USA.
Right.
At that time, we had, let's say, the system for late specimens coming from the remote operating room. So every evening, a technician and a resident were assigned to process those late specimens. And during one of those shifts, while I was busy doing my crossing, a technician who didn't want to suit up to put an apron, he asked me to help him with some vacuum sealed specimens. You know, you have to open them, rinse them, plastic them in buckets.
Right.
But the problem is I was already working on something quite messy, and in the confusion between my own grossing and the different bags he gave me, in a nutshell, 2 different specimens ended up in the same container.
Oh.
So honestly, it was totally my fault. Not partially, but so
Okay.
next morning when the team realized that the container was empty and the sample was missing, it was a complete chaos. all the technicians stopped working for about 30 minutes, looking all around everywhere until they managed to solve the mystery and finding this missing specimen. And if you think about it, that's about 10 technicians losing half an hour each. That's 5 hours of work because of a second of distraction.
Right.
Thank God we found it. But it was in 2016. And funny enough, it was the same day, coincidence, that I first used a food delivery app called Deliveroo, like Uber Eats. I was amazed about the user experience. I got notification when the order was received, when the food was ready, real-time location of the delivery guy, and even estimation of their arrival. And then it hit me. I realized that we were using better technology to track my pizza than the biological sample we use to do cancer diagnosis. And that was real wake-up call. Maybe the seed sprouted that day. I felt that we have to do something.
That's an interesting perspective. I hadn't thought of it that way. You referenced the article you wrote for the Pathologists, which is called From Grossing to Diagnosis. And it seems like, so these two incidents that we just talked about, that kind of inspired you to write this article, right?
Well, essentially, I wanted to, like we say in French, throw a stone in the pond, jeter un pavé dans la mare. In a nutshell, I wanted to shake things up a bit. At that time, I just attended the European Congress of Pathology in Florence. And looking through the program, I saw the important topic, digital pathology and AI, application for diagnosis, prognosis, case study. But once again, like always, for analytics, spatial grossing was largely overlooked or almost ignored. And this particular Congress was a significant milestone for me personally, because it was the first time we publicly disclosed our inventions and solutions like Algoscope. And after nearly 6 years of working behind the scenes in the dark without any communication. So I felt that in one hand, we were satisfied with the feedback we received, seeing the reactions of my peers live at the booth, fascination in their eyes. It was incredible. And often we heard delightful comments like, "Oh, this is very clever. This was missing. This is really useful." And the Voxelpad was seen not only like an advanced tool, but a mean to step into the world of digital pathology and AI early in the workflow, not only for the wall slate images. So it was something that I wanted to happen. And however, on the other hand, the buzz at the booth, there wasn't much echo in the formal scientific sessions, no paper, no article, no posters, nothing that will stay. So I felt that beyond just developing tangible solutions, part of my mission was also to raise awareness, to draw attention to the fact that the problem that we have in prevalence shouldn't even exist at the first place, especially because today we have the technology to solve them. And the article was my way of highlighting this critical gap between the existing setups and the current practice and what's technologically possible. So I wanted to draw attention on that. And I also wanted to share a bit of my own journey, which I hope is original enough to be worth telling. Though maybe I'm completely delusional and perhaps my story is completely boring. You tell me.
I mean, I don't think so. Like that's pretty much most of the reason why we're talking today. I thought it was interesting. I want to get into the founding of Algoscope and how that came to be, but I want to pull out a quote out of the article because it really struck me. You said, parts of our workflow, particularly grossing, have remained virtually unchanged for over a century. And I hadn't thought about that before, but that's true. Why do you think that is? Do you have any idea, like, why has it been unchanged for so long?
Very good question. And I touched upon it in a second article as well. But essentially, I believe that it's multifactorial. There are many reasons. One reason is simply inertia. Throughout my training, I asked many people why certain things were done a specific way. Because I'm a curious guy. I talk a lot. So maybe too much for some. I got the answer that I don't like it. It's because we always have done it this way.
Oh, I hate that.
Me too. Let's see.
Okay.
So it doesn't justify anything. It's not an answer.
Right.
We always don't have to get it. It's very ironic because pathology itself had historically embraced a lot of different technologies and technological advancement. Think about it in the early days of pathology, where organic chemistry in the beginning of pathology in the early 20th century, leading to special stains developed by the forefathers that bear their names that we still use on a daily basis, you name it.
Sure.
Think about histochemistry, molecular biology, genetics, and now the third revolution of AI, digital pathology. So we are a medical specialty that always knew to adapt and integrate new tech. So why pre-analytics, this specific part, remains somehow frozen in time? I think that another reason, all that inertia, is perhaps a bit less comfortable to admit, especially as a pathologist, is that grossing is often a delegated work. It's frequently performed by highly skilled technicians, pathology assistants, not always by pathologists or residents. So, or sometimes by even non-technicians in certain labs. I will keep my mouth shut, but it's not very legal. So it can somehow fall out of the direct line of sight or perceived scope of problems for the pathologist to solve quickly. So it becomes, in a way, someone else's problems. It's something that staff are paid to handle, and say it goes all out of the radar of the pathologist. Another thing, it's a timing aspect. Similarly to what we saw with AI and digital pathology, people were experimenting with neural network way back in the 80s and the 90s. It's not that new.
Right.
I remember when I was writing my medical thesis, because it was about AI in 2017, a company developed a product called PubNet. It was using convolutional networks, the same tech driving deep learning actually, to interpret pap smears. But it didn't work at that time. It was in 1994, and it failed miserably because at that time the computing power and the data storage capabilities weren't enough. And just for the anecdotes, early virtual slides were stored on magnetic tapes. Tapes for music that we had in auto radio.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. In theory, it was the right idea, but at the wrong time.
Sure. Okay.
So it needed more, Moore's law to catch up around 2012. We were able to have the deep learning boom. But at that time in the 90s, it wasn't enough. Moore's law.
Yeah, it's something about the doubling of computing power within, what was it, 18 months or something like that? I forget the exact number.
So exactly, this is it. So in the 90s, we didn't have the computing power, and we had it in 2012. So perhaps the pre-analytics is similar. Maybe it's about timing, the enabling of technologies, or the focused attention needed to drive a real change in grossing. Maybe only true in converging now, and maybe before it was too soon. And as one YouTube biologist ironically suggested, the topic of the video was about inventions. Maybe technologies and inventions evolve and get selected, much like living organisms. They need the right environment and the right time to truly flourish. I know.
Interesting. Okay. So then you're talking about the right timing and the right environment. Now, you founded Algoscope in 2021. What made that the right time? Can you tell me the story of the early years of the company?
Yeah, absolutely. The journey really started way before, while I was still a resident around, let's say, 2016. I began to see that working within the constraint of a public institution might not allow me to pursue the kind of changes I felt was necessary. And around that time, I also became aware of some pathologists who had taken the leap into entrepreneurship to tackle some problems. And I remember learning about the work of Dr. Shane Battier, an Australian pathologist who basically wanted to do something that we managed to do with 3D modeling of surgical specimens. And I had a little bit of tinfoil moment, like, crazy, how he stole my idea, but we had the idea first in 2013. So
Okay.
as you can see that sometimes things takes time. And it was showed during a pathologist that I respect a lot, which is Dr. Eric Lassie. It was during a USCAP conference in 2016. And oh my God, that was quite a talk. The name of the talk was maybe The Future of Pathology. And it was very inspiring and showing that people were thinking about the same ideas I had and some taking the path of entrepreneurship to solve them. And I saw also a Belgian pathologist. His name is Romaric Cross. And he developed an LIS Belgium because all the other LISs sucked. So he the matter of his own hands. And I met him in 2017 in Paris, in a conference. And I say, okay, we can be a pathologist and an entrepreneur at the same time. So I was nearly at the end of my training, my residency. I was already married with kids, and my career path was seemingly, let's say, laid out. And I started doing some deep reflection. I asked myself what I truly wanted to achieve, because I know I have a limited time. My faith, and similarly to all the philosophies like Buchido, emphasize on making the most of our time. I know I'm not going to live forever. And it led me on a quest for meaning within my profession as a pathologist. I wasn't necessarily driven to discover a new entity or scoring system, to develop a stain that named after me or something. I wasn't about publication or fame. I was more pragmatic. I realized that even if I became the best pathologist I could, my direct impact would always be limited on the numbers of slides in patient whose cases I reviewed. Then came, the seeds I told you about, and I had the critical thought about, what about paralytics problem? What if I could somehow help my colleague around the world become, let's say, just 1% better, 0.5% better in their diagnosis, simply by removing pre-analytical obstacles, making their life easier, reducing errors? I think that the cumulative impact would be vastly greater than anything I could achieve in, let's say, 10 careers as an individual pathologist. Think about it. You can have the best pathologist in the world, the most clever, most competent, or the most powerful AI tool for diagnosis. But if two similar biopsies from the same organ, let's say breast or prostate biopsies, from two different patients are swapped, mixed up during the pre-analytics phase, that expertise is useless. You will give patient A's diagnosis to patient B, thinking you have done your job perfectly. You go to sleep. Like we say in French, you sleep on your 2 ears. And when we realize this is a fundamental truth, and this is true everywhere, wherever you go, this is true. So I think this became my mission. Later on, because we begin, as I told you last time, we begin when I was a resident working evening and weekends without funding, even though we have done all of this without raising money or barely. So we founded Algoscope in 2021 alongside with Sami, my old med school friend, a clinical pathologist, and my third associate is an engineer. And I think that it was the vehicle to pursue this mission. developing solutions like our grossing product VoxelPath and the whole Algoscope suite was the purpose. And the validation I've received since from hundreds of colleagues I've presented the project that maybe really confirmed that this decision was good. So seeing the interest in our solutions, even from, let's say, very curious competitors at conferences, me and my partners feel that the sacrifice we made over those years were worthwhile. And I genuinely believe that while I have heard about digital pathology and AI for a long time, 7 years, with very slow to non-practical changes in the real world. I used a lot of non-digital labs. And I think that now a significant change in the pre-analytics space is coming very soon because it doesn't need that much of investment and that much of change. So I think that's good because it will be for the benefit of both healthcare professionals and patients. But I talk a lot. I'm the most extroverted guy from the team, but I refuse to take all the credit. There have been a lot of luck involved in our story. We met incredible men and women at the right time, many of them far more intelligent and competent than I am, and who were crazy enough to do this adventure and patient enough to put up with me all those years. So, and I think also that the right technology emerged at the right time. Like I said before, it was about timing. So with this amazing team at Algoscope, without them, none of this would have been possible. So I wanted to give them a heartfelt thank you. I don't have the many occasions to thank them, so I thank you for giving me this platform to thank them in public and make them a little bit uncomfortable.
Okay.
I wanted also equally to thank my whole, let's say, support system, parents, wife, siblings, and children who believed in me, are patient, even though I could have chosen to offer them a more comfortable life. But they understand that what we're trying to achieve is bigger than our own comfort or own self. Because if you think about it, if our solutions even allow to prevent just one swab, spare one patient from complications or unnecessary surgery, or avoid the immense stress of a misdiagnosis, whether it's telling someone they have a disease they don't, or missing one they do, which is worse, then all the sacrifice that we will have been absolutely worth it. And maybe those good deeds will benefit me the most in the hereafter, because as I told you, I'm not here to live forever.
That's important. If you make a difference in even one person's life, then it's all worth it. This is the People of Pathology podcast with our guest, Dr. Soufiane Azdad. We'll be right back. LabVine is an interactive online learning platform where laboratory professionals learn, develop, and discover by sharing knowledge and building on each other's experience. The platform provides global access to internationally accredited laboratory-specific courses and other resources developed by lab specialists like us for the laboratory industry. LabVine is free to sign up, and you can use the link in the show notes to get started. If you think it would be nice to have a helpful reference about digital pathology, I have some great news for you. Dr. Alexander Zhurov has written a book called Digital Pathology 101. All you need to know to start and continue your digital pathology journey. This book will help you whether you're a complete novice or a digital pathology trailblazer. You can get a copy of it by following the link in the show notes. And now for the rest of my conversation with Dr. Soufiane Azdad on the People of Pathology podcast. Can you elaborate on some innovations that you believe would revolutionize the grossing process? And then specifically, how would they improve efficiency and accuracy?
That's a great question, because when we talk about revolutionizing grossing, I think we need to look at it on multiple levels, from the very basic to highly advanced. And perhaps most fundamentally, we need a proper implementation of basic IT. Honestly, before we even get into fancy technology like AI, the state of basic medical IT, at least from my experience in Europe and in France, maybe, let's say, suboptimal. We often work with dated softwares, sometimes dating back to the early 2000s or 90s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that hasn't evolved much. And we see systems that actually slow us down, force us to rely on paper, require multiple platforms because they're imperfect. And for instance, why we often separate LASs from IMSs. Ideally, it should be the same thing. But there is this market separation often due to the fact that LIS's vendors have some shortcomings that the IMS's editors compensated. So simply by having modern, efficient, integrated IT system that work for us, not against us, would be a huge step in efficiency and reducing data entry errors. Second, we need to stop relying on human senses and manual processes for critical tasks where they are inherently weak. Our senses are not meant to do that. Our brains aren't designed for reliably checking, matching numbers and names all day long without fatigue or error. We shouldn't be relying on handwritten notes passed between different professionals. The primary mode of traceability, unfortunately, that's it. Most of labs work like that. So a key innovation is robust, automated traceability. Automated. We shouldn't rely on human senses to do that. And even though we use a barcode, RFID, and the computer vision, whatever works, it should be automated. So we should track specimens and the human actions reliably. And this directly will tackle the accuracy. Because if we automate that, if we remove hands, eyes, and brains from this equation, we will minimize the mix-ups and improve efficiency. And it saves some trees because less paper, less tree cutting.
True. Yeah.
The grossing station is a prime example. Having two people there simply because one needs to manually write notes while the other grosses. That workflow needs a serious rethink. It's incredibly inefficient. You have one person, one skilled PA or technician. They're occupied with scribing by hand. Technology can easily streamline that documentation, freeing up that second team member for higher value tasks instead of being tied up to note-taking.
There are other funny things that happened in the lab, like in the common workflow. The gross description is often written on paper, then afterwards dictated by the pathologist, then afterwards typed by a secretary. 3 different people doing essentially the same task. So a simple technology, as I told you, like voice to text, can eliminate this massive inefficiency and reduce potential transcription error. So once again, accuracy enhanced. And fourth, standardization through simple tools. Sometimes innovation isn't high tech. As I mentioned in the article, establishing some international standards for basic things like what do you use in the grossing table to measure? A ruler, yeah, right?
Right. Yeah.
Why don't we use a caliper? It's a standard practice in mechanical engineering. It's way more precise and reliable. And it's a cheap tool. Everybody can buy it, maybe $10, but there is no standard and everybody does what they want. There is no real guideline. So if we just agree to use calipers, I think we will enhance precision and traceability and accuracy as well. Those tools are cheap and already available, but rarely standard in a grossing room. So we should say goodbye ruler, hello caliper. I don't know, something too. But it's simple. It doesn't require a fancy technology. But let's talk about the most advanced technologies. Obviously, AI, it's a huge thing. You can cite conventional machine learning, deep learning, and computer vision for tasks like image analysis or tracking. But the most significant and exciting potential right now with generative AI. Generative AI offers some potential to revolutionize, to give us the revolution we are waiting for in the lab for pathologists, clinicians, and many other healthcare professionals. I'm very excited to see concrete application. We use it a little bit, but there is a lot more to come. So we can also use enhanced visualizations, like we said about 3D modeling. We can provide better spatial understanding of complex specimens like that. You can do it with your mobile. We can do it with our device. Can do it with many ways. And also for education purposes, you can use augmented reality. I think it's very nice to train and educate pathologist assistant and young residents. Definitely robotics. Robotics offer perhaps a way of tackling the problem of repetitive tasks. And I think maybe in the near future, we will see robotic arms in the parametric process. And there is a huge potential with the combination of robotics and generative AI. We used to see, the Boston Dynamics video 10 years ago. It requires millions of dollars of R&D. And now some high school student project only linking ChatGPT with some robotic legs give roughly the same results. That's very exciting. And I think robotics and AI will offer very soon something useful in the pathology lab. So ultimately, the goal of all those technologies should be to augment human professionals rather than replacing them. We should use tedious, repetitive tasks, the task that we are humanly error-prone. And this will free a lot of, let's say, painful experiences and time. And it will allow us to focus on more complex decision-making or analyze our other problems. But it will free us from the cheap work. Or I don't know if it's an English word, but bas besoin we say in French. So if I like to refer to history, like in the steam engine revolution, it wasn't just one technology that emerged. It was a convergence of innovation, like the readiness of the ecosystem and importantly, the evolution of the mindset. I'm talking about the steam engine because if I ask you who invented it, who invented the steam engine? James Watt, 200 years ago? What if I say it was discovered maybe 300 years before by a guy in Istanbul named Ibn al-Haytham, and almost 1,000 years before in Alexandria by Heron. So humans have the steam power since almost 2,000 years, and we just embrace it 200 years ago. So it's timing, always.
That seems to be a theme for this conversation so far, that the timing has to be there for sure. So these innovations you're talking about, and I think you might have touched on this a little bit, but how can these be used as teaching tools?
This innovation opened up fantastic possibilities for pathology education, moving beyond the, let's say, traditional methods. Early in my residency, I heard about, in a paper in Archive for Pathology, I heard about 3D printing, surgical specimen for educational purposes. It made me realize that, this is very cool, guys. So the 3D printing technology, and he had this idea of printing plastic, let's say, specimens to educate medical students and PA students. I thought that was nice, but my intention was to more into 3D modeling technology. I say this is maybe more important, but looking at how people can handle a new technology and apply it to education was very inspiring to me. So I think that this mindset can offer trainees valuable tool to understand complex spatial relations. And maybe the digital documentation of the specimen, as we discussed earlier, having high quality image, even 2D images and video capturing during the grossing. That's what we basically offer with Voxapat. We will create a rich, searchable digital library of specimens and procedures that could become a material for teaching cases. So trainees could review procedures and diverse specimens and learn from experts, like, let's say, tutorial videos, step by step, enhanced by AI agents. There is almost endless capabilities, but we always need data. We always need, let's say, a tangible application. But perhaps once again, the most exciting thing that I'm watching is the application of generative AI to the education. This offer a tremendous opportunity. Imagine learning platforms like, Duolingo, the language learning app that everybody use, that personalize lessons based on your weak points and experience. We could imagine some, let's say, pathology courses like that with a customized learning path.
Yeah, that's true. I think that would really change education for sure.
Yeah, it's already happening. I've been experimenting with the latest models, large language models, GPT, Gemini, Quark, etc., on pathology topics and questions. And while they were kind of okay, 12, 18 months ago, now the progress they have done is genuinely astounding. They are rapidly becoming powerful knowledge tool. And I think that students are kind of lucky to live this era.
Yeah, for sure. How do you envision the future of pathology if these improvements that you're talking about are implemented?
Don't ask me this kind of question because I'm a big sci-fi fan. I think that the potential could be endless. Very exciting things.
Yeah.
With all of those tools rightly implemented, I envision a very exciting future for pathology. One that's significantly different from today. On a daily basis, less stressful work days for pathologists, technicians, and PAs, with many of all the tedious, low-value tasks automated, leading to better operational efficiency, allowing us to handle the increasing workload with the same staff, but with a vastly improved technology support. And critically, I see a future with enhanced patient safety because it maybe is the more important thing. Tackling the weak points with robust traceability to avoid to say someday to a guy or patient, sorry, sir, we mixed up your sample and so it turned out to have cancer. Your test wasn't negative, sorry. So beyond the day-to-day, I envision a progressive transformation of pathology itself. The traditional boundaries we have between, let's say, medical specialty, pathology, radiology, etc., will be more blurred. I foresee convergence between them because if you have so much, let's say, algorithm that allow you to handle this quantity of data, we could imagine fields like pathology, oncology, radiology, imaging, and genetic genomics having maybe a fluid concept like pathoradiomics, maybe. It's much.
Oh,
And we could even be transversal experts. Imaging doctor is one guy that able to interpret radiology images, pathology images, the other only signal and the clinical pathology results. Let's say,
interesting.
like we say in French, qui vivra verra. Who will see. Perhaps the most radically transformation I would love to see is obtaining, let's say, microscopic images right on the working crossing bench. Imagine telling all the traditional workflow that is 200 years old, tackling it completely, no tissue processing, paraffin embedding, sectioning, etc. What if we could get the microscopic images directly at the grossing table? So pathologists will be always wearing the aprons and some technologies are already evolving. Some are emerging on fresh tissue analysis in the operating room. I think it's a Swiss company called Salmon Tree. One
Okay.
other is an American one, is Muse, that using UV surface excitation on paraffin blocks. So having microscopic images in another way could be a game changer. And I think pathology will be deeply transformed by this technological revolution. And I said earlier, well, pathology always evolved alongside technology and maybe not always with pre-analytics, but
Right.
overall it adapted. And I'm incredibly optimistic because I feel the changes will finally bring the entirety of pathology into the 21st century, not with the pulse frozen in the past. The potential is enormous, I think. And I think that we're very proud that thanks to our solutions and the Algoscope suite, we will be part of this truly profound and pragmatic evolution. We aim to contribute by generating a new kind of data, value data that we can, let's say, with other companies, saving pressure, saving time of a healthcare professional, and most foremost, improving traceability and efficiency. So basically, that's it. Even if I have a lot of imagination, I think very good things are coming along the way.
Okay. Okay. I like that. That's a good viewpoint of the future. All right. Last question. It's a bit of a philosophical one. When we first spoke, you mentioned that if we know the workflow is flawed, then keeping it that way is unethical. And I've kind of been thinking about that little quote a lot. Can you tell me more about that? What does that really mean for you?
Yeah, I do remember saying that, and I like the quoted the old Latin proverb, errare humanum est, perseverare diabolicum, which translates to err is human, but to persist in error is diabolical. And it's true.
Yeah.
It's human to make mistakes. We are machines. Patients might even understand and maybe forgive certain human errors. However, it's much harder to accept, and frankly, it should be unacceptable when errors occur due to known systematic flaws, like a simple label mix-up caused by a process we all know is vulnerable. We know the workflow isn't perfect, and most of people are doing their absolute best within that system. But the ethical issue arises when we know we are placing human beings in the critical roles, asking them to perform tasks all day long that the human brain is simply optimized for, like a constant checking, etc. So if we recognize this vulnerability and both potentially know that better methods or technology exist or could be developed, and if we know that, and yet we do nothing tangible to improve that weak point, that's where the ethical problem lies. Maybe diabolical is too strong, but it's at the very least unethical.
Okay.
I didn't mention this earlier when we discussed about when we founded Algoscope, but a core principle guiding me comes from my faith, from an Islamic teaching that says, من رأى أحدكم منكرا فليغيره بيده فمن يستطيع فليغيره بلسانه ومن يستطيع فليغيره بقلبه ذلك أضعف الإيمان. And translated it's something to the effect of you sees an evil or injustice, let him change it with his hands, and if he's not able to do so, then with his tongue, and he's not able to do so, then with his heart. And this is the weakest level of faith. So for me, seeing the flaws in the practical workflow felt like something I couldn't just accept internally. I felt compelled to try and change it with my hands through action.
Right.
I think I was good. And let's say on a even more personal note, recently I was complaining a bit of all the hardship I had and the challenges we face. And my mom told me something very simple, yet very profound. She said, my son, your project aims to make people's life easier. May God Almighty make your life easy. that touched me very deeply. And ever since, whenever we face a complication, I have this deep conviction that we will overcome it. I'm far from being a perfect son, but I'm incredibly lucky to have such a supportive loved ones. And I'm not even sure why I'm sharing all this. It's getting a bit emotional and personal, but it truly gets to the heart of my motivation. It's really facilitated the lives of my colleagues through technology that we developed or the other can advise to use, even if it's not ours. We can also try to truly change the daily reality in labs around the world for the better. And if we succeed in that, then I believe that I will have accomplished my mission, both as a doctor and perhaps even my mission as a human being on this planet.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dennis, for having me. It truly has been a pleasure and an honor. It really means the word to me. And I hope we get the chance to meet in person someday.
I hope so too. This has been super interesting. Dr. Soufiane Azdad, thank you very much.
Yes,
I really enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you, Dennis.
If you're looking for another episode of the People of Pathology podcast to check out after this one, here's a clip from my interview with Dr. Brian Jackson as we talk about some ethical considerations in patient testing.
And this is a really big area that needs a lot of future work. This whole idea of making testing more patient-centered, and a lot of that is making the specimen collection more patient-centered. I don't like getting my blood drawn. I think a lot of people don't like it. And the fact that you have to drive into a patient service center to have that done, or if you're an inpatient, you might get awakened early in the morning to have that done. Really, a lot more work needs to be done to make blood collection, less impactful, or other specimen collection, less impactful physically and schedule-wise on the patient. We need to figure out better ways to, collect at home. So Elizabeth Holmes from Theranos really exploited this idea, even though she didn't have a technological solution that actually worked. It was just a sales job. But the reason that Theranos was so appealing was that she set up her company to be really, really patient-centric.
You can hear more from Dr. Brian Jackson in episode 62. Okay, big thanks to Dr. Soufiane Azdad. So in this episode, we explored not only his remarkable personal and professional journey, but also the driving philosophy behind his mission to transform the field of pathology. Dr. Azdad's path to medicine, and ultimately to pathology, was anything but conventional. Initially resistant to the idea of spending his life in the lab, he eventually found a natural fit in a specialty that combined hands-on work with the visual complexity that he loved. We heard about the key experiences that changed his view of the pathology workflow. These moments sparked the founding of Algoscope in 2021, a company built on the idea that pathology should be just as technologically advanced, accurate, and efficient as any other medical domain. With a focus on AI, robotics, and automation, Dr. Azdad is working to address pre-analytical vulnerabilities and bring greater traceability and reliability to pathology workflows. But at the heart of Dr. Azdad's work is something even more powerful than technology, a strong ethical foundation rooted in his faith and personal values. He believes that once we recognize flaws in a system, especially those that can directly impact patient outcomes, and we have the tools to fix them, it becomes a moral imperative to act. Innovation for him is not about prestige or profit, it's about responsibility. Dr. Azdad's story is a powerful reminder that questioning the status quo isn't just a professional duty, it's a moral one. In an industry that can be slow to change, he is showing that it's possible to lead with both technological vision and ethical clarity. His work with Algoscope offers a glimpse into a future where pathology is more efficient, more accurate, and more aligned with the needs of both the lab and the patients that they serve. As always, I'll have links in the show notes to everything that we talked about today. Don't forget you can follow the show at People of Path on Instagram and Twitter, or just connect with me on LinkedIn. Thank you for continuing to share the show with others. Together, let's inspire the next generation of pathologists and laboratory professionals. This show is a member of Health Podcast Network. Thanks for listening. I'm Dennis Strank, and I'll talk to you next time on the People of Pathology podcast.